the most gracious, the most merciful. I'm holding up the number 3. Oh, why is the volume so low? Yeah, I'm holding up the number 3 because I want to do a bit of a reminder who we've talked about so far. We started with Moses, then we came on the story of Abraham, and then we talked about Noah. 3 great people in Islamic and human history. Today we'll talk about Hud, the Thamadites, Midianites. I don't know what just happened with my camera. Why is this happening to my camera? Anyway, let's hope this continues. Otherwise, there's some glitches that are happening in my software which I need to resolve. So, as I mentioned, this is a long chapter. It has 227 verses, and we've covered a chunk of the story of Moses because we've discussed Moses before. I don't know what's happening with my camera. There must be something wrong. Okay, I'll wait one more time, and if it continues, then I'll have to disconnect this camera and use my original camera in the first place. We discussed the story of Moses, and we discussed Abraham after that, who's also the father of the 3 Abrahamic religions, the grandfather, shall we say, because the fathers are the founders or the messengers. And then we talked about Noah, who was also before Abraham. And it's also a very interesting tale with Noah. Today we'll talk about Hud, with the people of Ad. I forget what the English word for that is, but we know, you can easily search that up. Then the Thamadites, which were with Saleh, and then the people of Lot. Sorry, yeah, I said Midianites. No, we'll talk about Lot, and then next week we'll wrap up this chapter by talking about the Midianites. So just to recap: Moses, Abraham, Noah. We've done that. We've discussed them in detail, and today Hud, Thamadites, and Lot. We'll discuss these 3, and then next week, hopefully, we'll talk about the Midianites in 2023. Yeah, it's going to be the new year. So very happy with that. So without further ado, God, please keep my camera safe. I don't know what's happening with the camera. Let's dive right in. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. I start from chapter 26 in terms of revelation. In terms of arrangement, verse number 123. The last verse was, "And verily, O Lord, He is indeed the Almighty, the most merciful." We stopped here. Today we'll start with 123, which says, "Ad people denied the messengers when their brother Hud said to them, Will you not fear God and obey Him? Verily, I am a trustworthy messenger to you, so fear God, keep your duty to Him, and obey Him." Simple enough. No reward do I ask of you for it. So he's saying, he's not asking for a reward in exchange for bringing them glad tidings or bringing them a warning or bringing them ideas to follow. He's not expecting something in return. My reward is only from the Lord of the Alamin, which is mankind, jinn, and all that exists. Do you build high palaces on every high place while you do not live in them? And do you get for yourselves palaces as if you will live therein forever? And when you seize somebody, seize you him as tyrants. So this is interesting. He's putting things into perspective. He's saying that, so when you build these palaces in a higher place, you live in them, right? It's a rhetoric. It's painting the imagery to show the critical perspective. So you build these palaces, you live in them, right? And when you get these palaces, do you live in them as if you're going to live forever? And when you seize somebody, or when you take control of somebody, do you take control as if you're tyrants? So it's a mirror being shown to society, or to the people being addressed. It's a mirror being shown to them. That's a nice rhetorical device. So if that were to happen today, I think that does happen today with so many things anchors and influencers online and in print and on TV and in person who would say, so when you go home, do you ever spend time with your family, or do you just stick to your phone and tablets and whatever? And when you drive a car, do you ever give way to the cyclist or the pedestrian, or do you just focus on your own driving? So these are rhetorical devices which doesn't directly implicate the listener. It just shows an image of just not behaving perfectly well, and then you correct that behavior, or you look at it critically. So fear God, keep your duty to him and obey me, and keep your duty to him, fear him who has aided you with all good things that you know. He has aided you with cattle and children and gardens and springs. Verily I fear for you the torment of a great day. So it's the same message. It's the same message that Muhammad gives, that Jesus gives, that Moses gives, that Noah gave, that Abraham gave, that Lot gives, Saleh gives. This maybe not Adam. Adam is in a separate category because he was the first man, allegedly, or as we believe. But the message is the same. Obey this, follow this, don't do that, or there will be a great day where you will face the day of reckoning. They said, it is the same to us whether you preach or not, or be not of those who preach. This is no other than the false tales and religion of the ancients. They're saying the exact same thing. They're like, we've heard this before, and we are not going to be punished. So they denied him, and we destroyed them. Verily, in this is indeed a sign. Most of them are not believers. And verily, O Lord, he is indeed the Almighty, the most merciful. This is one story. This is Hud and the people of Ad. This is one story. But we've seen this story repeat itself throughout the Quran and all other religious texts and all history. We may have electric cars, driverless cars, driverless trains, eventually driverless airplanes. We may be able to launch into space and descend back and land in our position of launch or wherever. We may be able to plant a Neuralink chip and become cyborgs. We may be able to do so many things. We're curing cancer. We're fighting off AIDS. We created a vaccine within 10 months of a new virus being spread across onto the world. There's many things that we have accomplished, and we've come so far. But human beings are essentially the same. The same story exists today. There will be people who tell the truth or who warn others about living in a certain way, and a large part of the public decries them. Oh, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. And they color them and paint them with all kinds of labels, all kinds of names. We behave as if this is something new, but it isn't. This is human nature. You must sit and critically address the ideas being presented and then judge them on the merit of truth or falsehood or flaw. But people don't do that. There is a herd mentality, there is a group think, as they say, and they think along those lines, and they say, all right, this is what we're going to think, this is how we're going to be, this is what we believe, and that is it. That's what we're going to do. So it's the same here as it was with Muhammad, with Jesus, with Moses, with Noah, with Abraham, with so many people across the world. If you go beyond the Quran, look at Buddha, look at Buddhism, look at his ascetic lifestyle, which people started to follow. And then when he started saying, okay, let's eat, let's do this, when he started becoming enlightened, people started saying, no, this is not our Buddha. This is not the person we're going to follow. There's so many cases of this actually happening. Thamud, the people denied the messenger when their brother Salih said to them, "Will you not fear God and obey him?" Same message. It's the same message, and I argue it's the same message because it's the same God. And there are religions where there are pantheons of gods, and there are collections of millions of gods or hundreds. But in my belief, they're not separate beings fighting against each other for supremacy. Otherwise, one would have been declared the victor. But if you could ask anybody in Hinduism, for example, between Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who would win in a fight? Many might say Shiva, many might say Brahma, many might say Vishnu, many might say Durga, many might say somebody else. You don't know these things. So even when there's a pantheon or where there's a multiplicity of God, those are not different gods. Those are God. That's God in different forms. Thank you, Balu Lango, my best friend, for teaching me this 19 years ago, where he said, "Well, we don't believe in different gods. We believe in God in different forms." And that's how they see it. So because the Lord is the same, the message is the same. It's the same again. Will you not fear God and obey him? I am a trustworthy messenger to you, so fear God. Keep your duty to him and obey me word for word. No reward do I ask of you for it. My reward is only from the Lord of the Alameen, mankind, jinn, and all that. Now, this is something I have to tell you about the Quran. Critically, if you read this, one might say, "Oh, he's just repeating verses. It's the same verse, blah, blah, blah." That's not a great rhetorical device. In fact, repetition, particularly in poetry, but also in prose, is an incredible rhetorical device. Because if you ask anybody to recite this part in Arabic, they will show you that there is a great rhythm. When you listen to a great music, you have a chorus or you have crescendos which sound very similar to something that has gone before. Think of Ode to Joy by Beethoven. There's a rhythm and there's a repetition. That's what creates meaning, and that's what the universe is constructed on. There's repetition. But also, when the same message is repeated 3 separate times in the same chapter, or even more times, somebody, because Muslims memorize the Quran by the millions, there are millions of Muslims who have memorized the Quran. They're called Hafiz, which means protector or preserver, because Mahfuz means safe and protected. So Hafiz is somebody who's protected the Quran in their hearts. So you'd ask them to talk about this, and they can relay the entire series of verses to you, which explain the same idea because it's repeated. So it's a great rhetorical device. Will you be left secure in that which you have here, in gardens and springs and green crops, field and date palms with soft spadix, and you hew out in the mountains houses with great skill? So here there's a variation. There's repetition and then there's variation. I love it. It's almost like a riff. So the bass continues and then there's slight variations happening. So fear God, keep your duty to him and obey me, and follow not the command of al-musrifun, which is their chiefs, their leaders, who are polytheists, criminals and sinners, who make mischief in the land and reform not. They said, "You are only of those bewitched, you are but a human being like us, then bring us a sign if you are of the truthful." He said, "Here is a she-camel. It has a right to drink water, and you have a right to drink water, each on a day known. And touch her not with harm, lest the torment of a great day should seize you." I think he knew it was a test. Wouldn't you, when you're in this narrative argument, this intellectual, but also visceral, also existential argument, and somebody says, "Well, here's a she-camel. You drink water, and so does she. Don't touch her until the day of judgment." I don't expect them to say, "Well, we disagree with him, but since he's asked us not to touch her, we're going to let her live." No, I don't think so. And I think he knew as well. I think that was God's way of showing them as well. So they killed her, but they killed her and then they became regretful, so the torment overtook them. Verily, in this is indeed a sign, and most of them are not believers. This is interesting. They killed her, and then they became regretful. I wonder what the temporal jump is between them killing her and then becoming regretful. Did they become regretful at once? They killed, oh no, what have I done? Or did they kill her, realize that they've committed a major crime, a great calamity is about to befall them, and because of that they regret? I wonder what the consequential and temporal dimension here is here. And verily your Lord, he is indeed the Almighty, the Most Kind. And the people of Lot who dwelt in the towns of Sodom in Palestine, denied the messenger, when their brother Lot said to them, will you not fear God and obey him? Verily I am a trustworthy messenger to you, so fear God, keep your duty to him, and obey me. No reward do I ask of you for it. My reward is only from the Lord of the Alamin. Go you unto the males of the Alamin, mankind, and leave those whom God has created for you to be your wives. Nay, you are a trespassing people. So, if you're not familiar with the story of Lot, it is the notion of homosexuality is discussed there. And I think I've discussed this before as well. Maybe Surah Arafah or something, a long time ago, a couple of months ago, where this story came up and we discussed homosexuality in that time. And in Islam, it's not supported. People may have their opinions about it, and your opinions are appropriate, and in your own accord, they are valid. But with regards to the religious doctrine, it doesn't accept it. It doesn't condone it. It doesn't support it. It doesn't accept it. Many countries would tell you that it is punishable in various means. But from the Quran, what I'm showing you is they're being told not to go in that. You are a trespassing people. So you're not going to your wives, but you're going into males? That's the rhetoric being used here. They said, if you seize not, O Lot, verily you will be one of those who are driven out. He said, I am indeed of those who disapprove with severe anger and fury your action, which means this evil of sodomy. Sodomy is how it was termed. Sodomy, sodomize, that's how it's termed. Today, in the 21st century, this word is not used anywhere except these religious texts, maybe in some places, but particularly in the West, homosexuality is acknowledged and in many spheres accepted. As a Muslim, I have my own beliefs of it, but also as a rationalist and as somebody who's grown up in England and now in Canada, my perspective is more on living and letting live, more on those lines of lack of interference, particularly on a societal level. But that's my perspective. And B, I believe that in most things. So I don't believe in society interfering in people's behavior, but we don't have an agreement on which behavior is advantageous and disadvantageous. For example, if you hear domestic violence going on or child abuse going on inside a home, or if you see it as a neighbor, do you intervene or not? So we know that physical violence on a whole, not that we know, we've agreed, because there was a time where it wasn't like this, and there's still most places in the world where this may not be the belief, but particularly in Northwest Europe, North America, the belief is that physical violence is disadvantageous, whether it's a wife assaulting her husband, husband assaulting the wife, husband assaulting husband, wife assaulting wife, and so forth. Or parents assaulting children, or children assaulting parents. Physical violence is thought to be a disadvantageous aspect. If you see it happening, do you intervene? Most responsible neighbors would intervene in some level. They might just call 911 or 999. They might just do that. Hey, I'm hearing commotion. In that regard, I wonder if my laissez-faire perspective, which is the live and let live perspective, exists. Because what if the place you live in does not condone homosexuality? It calls it sodomy or sodomizing. So that's something that we need to discuss openly. Not in echo chambers and silos, but openly, societally, and come up with structures that are not too restrictive, but are also not too inappropriate or uncomfortable for people. You have to take the whole of society together, not just what people think is progressive or conservative. Otherwise, there's always going to be fractures in society. Always. And fractures destroy society, which is what we're seeing in a lot of the world. Anyway, he said, I am indeed of those who disapprove with severe anger and fury your action, which means the evil of sodomy. My Lord, save me and my family from what they do. So we saved him and his family, all, except an old woman, his wife, among those who remained behind. Then afterward, we destroyed the others, and we rained on them a rain of torment. And how evil was the reign of those who had been warned. So this is a story. Verily, in this is indeed a sign, yet most of them are not believers. And verily, your Lord, he is indeed the Almighty, the most merciful. And I'll stop here, because this is verse number 175, and next week we will finish verse 227, and that will bring me to the end of Surah Ash-Shu'ara. And I think, what just happened? Well, thank you, God, for keeping it going. Is it when I touch this, the camera goes off? I don't know. But anyway, thank you for keeping it going while I was reading the chapter, and then suddenly the camera starts making its problems. So, yeah, next week I finish this, and the week after that I'll be traveling, I think. So, yeah, that's perfect. So, what's interesting here? What's going on? Oh, why is this camera causing troubles? What are you doing? Why are you causing troubles for me? In any case, we've covered the third quarter of the chapter, the story of Hud, the story of Saleh, and the story of Lot. And then later, next week, we'll talk about the Midianites. We've already talked about Moses, Abraham, and Noah. And this is an important, large, summarizing type of a chapter. Lot to unpack here, but maybe I can unpack it next week when I finish it off, wrap up, and then discuss it further. So thank you ever so much for your time. Have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend, and I shall see you next week. Take care. And a wonderful new year. Wonderful.